It's time to start, right? Go. Hi, everyone. Today, welcome to the Web3 Gaming Infrastructure Trends and Innovation panel. My name is Andy Chow. I lead ecosystem and business development for YGG. Today, I have some old friends, some new friends, and old colleagues even on the panel. So I'm excited to learn about Web3 gaming from them. So without further ado, please introduce yourself and your respective organization.
Hey everybody, I'm Ed Chang. I am head of gaming at Ava Labs. We are kind of the creators of the Avalanche blockchain. We're a layer one, VM agnostic, and we've been investing in a lot of different verticals across like DeFi, institutional gaming, and I lead our gaming efforts.
Hi everyone, my name is Darren. For a bit about my background, I've launched 2 GameFi projects. I've launched a crypto casino, now I'm with ICP. I co-founded the ICP Hong Kong with my friend Ryan in the audience. So we're also a layer one. We invest into different verticals, DeFi, GameFi is something we're looking into. I'm also a heavy gamer, League of Legends Diamond 1. I think it's good to be a gamer because if you can't recognize what a good game is, how can you invest even on an investor level? And even from a project leader, entrepreneur, so how we invest in games is that we can actually class games whether they're in bronze, or they have a potential to be epic games, or potential to be classed into legendary. So I think it's really good to be an essential gamer.
Really like that. We can talk about that more after. Hello everyone, my name is Mark Mee. I'm a business development director here at Near Foundation, which is also in layer one. I also lead gaming and actually located here in Taipei, so actually really happy that Sal got invited as well as kind of see how well TBW has been done this year. In terms of Near, we also support many different verticals outside of gaming. Whether that's sports, entertainment, brand loyalty, rewards. I think if you talk to many of the projects, typically it's always good tech and allowing kind of the support to really be your blockchain kind of partner in terms of all the different verticals, right? But today I focused on gaming, so really excited to talk more about gaming and kind of where this direction is going and what we're really excited about. All right, thanks guys.
Hi, my name is Paul Kim. I'm the CEO for XPLA. XPLA is a layer one blockchain. It is developed by one of the largest gaming companies from Korea called Come To Us. Come To Us has been developing and publishing games for the past 25 years. So we have hundreds of IPs and games that we're going to be releasing as a Web3 game on our chain. But now, Come To Us also invests very heavily into the entertainment space in Korea. So we also produce TV shows, movies, music, animations, and what we're trying to build with XPLA is a gaming and entertainment-focused chain, and that's driven by not technology, but more so on the content itself. So we believe if you have high-quality content on the chain, the users will naturally come to you anyways. So we're leveraging what we have and what we're good at to build an ecosystem around gaming and entertainment.
All right, well, thank you for the introductions. So my first question actually is just maybe setting the stage around, we've heard a lot about how NFTs and Web3 is going to change gaming. So I'm just curious from each of your perspectives, from each of your infrastructure layers, how you think about that and how that's going to evolve in the next phase of gaming.
Yeah, so I think for Avalanche, one of the unique selling propositions for us is that we offer app chains, right? They're called subnets in comparison to maybe other monolithic chains where you have a single chain. And sometimes if you have enough traffic and transactions on there, it can potentially clog the network, and it leads to things like reorgs, high transaction fees, low throughput. So we've got partners like DeFi Kingdoms, Shrapnel, Gonzilla, Merit Circle, TSM Blitz, who are all building their own kind of separate app chains, right? So the ability to have kind of composability across that is really interesting. And I think early on, people would say, you could take your FIFA shoes and bring them into League of Legends as an example, and I don't think that's necessarily feasible. But being able to seamlessly transact items across different platforms and ecosystems is a really interesting use case, along with stable coins. As we think about UGX with things like Roblox and Unreal Fortnite and things like that. There's a way to reward creators, matchmaking, skill-based matchmaking, wagering. Those are all some really cool use cases. And then kind of, interesting bridging technology like Layer 0 allows you to seamlessly bring your assets across to different chains and plug them in and kind of transform them. So those are all like use cases within gaming that we're excited about that we're doubling down on.
Yeah, I think similar to that for ICP, right? Kind of what are those unique selling advantages when you're talking to games?
Yeah, we really believe in like 100% true decentralization. If you look at many games in the blockchain market from the last cycle, when they class themselves as blockchain games, what really happens is that, are they really on the blockchain? Are the graphics on the blockchain? What's really happening in the background, I think for most of you that actually don't notice, is that blockchain games are actually hosted on Amazon or Google Cloud Services. The only blockchain element in blockchain gaming right now is the Wallet Connect. So does this really class themselves, can they really class themselves as a blockchain game? So for us, we're really looking forward to games actually built 100% on the ICP ecosystem. What we're really big on is currently NFTs that can be seen as identities. When you sell your accounts, you can actually sell the NFT, and you actually have NFTs within the account themselves as well. So what we want to take away is the actual ownership from Web2 institutions, empower the users. So when you want to sell your account, you can sell it anytime, anywhere, to anyone you want without the interference of big institutions. So we look at Riot Games, if you was to sell your account or even buy a skin, does it really truly belong to you? So if you spend $1,000 on Riot Games, they can actually shut down your account and you can get your money refunded. How does it actually make sense? If you go to a vending machine and you buy Pepsi, the Pepsi should belong to you because you paid for it. But why doesn't it actually apply in games? This is one thing which we don't agree on. And we actually want to grant true decentralization to every gamer out there.
Yeah, completely agree kind of with the ideals and what everyone is highlighting. I think I'll talk about it from 2 points. I think one is just Web3 gaming and the use case of blockchain. And then two is more kind of how Near fits within that narrative, right? I think off the bat, it's pretty obvious, what you could do with blockchain, right? You could do asset ownership. You could do skins and make it very easy for the secondary market to buy and sell. You can take token gate, right? You can get access. You don't no longer have to buy cartridges to play. You no longer have to pay for Steam. You can do it even on the secondary market to get access to games. I think these are all the ideas of how blockchain fits within gaming and kind of the obvious ones or the most up to in your face, but would love to kind of see where the innovative aspects is. And I think that's kind of where you're going to see a lot of excitement in the next year, especially as the market gets a little bit more exciting and seeing the use cases of what people are triggering. And that's the innovation that we can't really predict, right? And that's the innovation that the large studios will probably not try to take a risk on right away. And so that's that. I think the innovation from that standpoint is really awesome. And then from the initial game itself, you have all these tons of great games coming out that have been developing and it's spent millions of dollars, these past 2 years that are coming out next year. For those, adding kind of these, the tech aspects of blockchain and seeing that it works and gaining traction is going to be something that really solidifies the fact that, Web3 gaming is here to stay, that blockchain does make a difference, that it does add value to the users, right? And then from the Near perspective, I think, everything that's highlighted, I think is a different angle based on the builder and the developer of what they want, right? So, for example, for Near, it's infinitely scalable in terms of wanting and needing more transactions. Now, we don't specifically have don't feel like we need subnets or things like that, but because the chain can handle and kind of grow without increasing gas fees or clogging the system up. But, we are really focused on the decentralization and open web. So, for example, we partnered with many other chains actually to really support that and build that. So recently we announced a data availability layer, a DA layer, which partnered with, let's say, Polygon CDK, so that if you did want to have your own chain and really run very smoothly on EVM and things like that, we're able to work and support that as well. So Near as a whole also has account extraction, which really you can buy and sell kind of accounts as well. And I think these are all points that it really, I would say, based on your normal user, you would have no idea. I truly don't think gamers really care what chain it's on. It's really about something that just works, right? And all of these are the functions in which these studios really need to do their due diligence and really, understand the tech from all different angles and really figure out what best fits for them, right? Just because I think this market is so exciting and there's so much tech developing and really hard. But really excited to talk more.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So actually, Paul, I want to challenge that a little bit. You mentioned the large studios, kind of, being a little bit hesitant to jump in. But with Paul, we have come to us, and a lot of the games are being developed in XBLA. So Paul, can you talk a little bit more about that?
From a Web2 game studios perspective, I don't think people understand like how Web3 enabling ownership of assets, how much that disruption that actually brings to the Web2 gaming industry. That alone itself is, it's a huge change in the dynamics of the Web2 gaming ecosystem that we talk about it a lot, so we don't really think about like how important that is to the gaming industry. So from a Web2 gaming perspective, we've always been at the forefront of whatever happens in the gaming industry. So when smartphones were first introduced, we were one of the first ones to develop games on it. When the App Store was introduced, our games were one of the first to be ever featured on the App Store. And when free-to-play model were introduced, we implemented that to our games almost immediately. So we've always been on the lookout for what's going to be the next thing that changes the gaming industry. And we looked at Axie Infinity, we looked at NBA Top Shot, we saw how those games were successful in 2021, and we, from a group perspective, our chairman made a top-down decision to actually jump into the Web3 gaming, so blockchain industry, just almost immediately. And so it took us about 5-6 months to build out our gaming infrastructure and start to release the game. So we moved really quickly into the gaming space, but I understand the traditional Web2 game companies being hesitant in doing so because they have to protect their IPs. They do get a lot of pushback from the community, so I understand that, but for us, we understood that this is going to be the mainstream in the future. So in the next 3 to 5 years, I think it'll be more people will be playing Web3 games, hopefully. So yeah, we want to move as fast as possible to.
If I could add something. Yeah. I actually wanted to kind of push back a little bit on what you were saying, which was, unless it's fully decentralized, then it's not a Web3 game, right? If it's just like transactions or NFTs in there, because I do want to riff off of what Paul was saying in that, pretty much I think we've probably talked to almost every Web2 studio looking at Web3. And in the bull market, people were on earnings calls saying, Web3 is the future, look at Axie. And then, the play to earn Ponzi kind of died out and everything went to zero. And they were like, oh, no, we're not touching this, right? And so there were very few believers, I think, on the Web2 side. I think XBLA is actually one of them. We've met with some of that team and they're all in and there's very few of them. And so, for us, we think about like a crawl, walk, run. It's like, we'll meet you where you are. And so at this point, I think we'd all be happy with a mid-core AAA game that has 1, 5, 10 million MAUs with in-game items. Because to this day, I think the best example of like what Web3 can do is actually Counter-Strike, which is totally a Web2 game, right? Everyone talks about, skins will go for 6 figures and you get your account locked and Web3 solves this. But I think we'd be happy with just any Web3 game that actually is the example, right? And then fully on-chain stuff is super fascinating, but I don't think studios necessarily care about decentralization yet versus like regulation and what their audience is going to say and how they message it. But yeah,
I think that's a great point. So I think first on skins, I think there's a lot of people don't care about skins unless they care about the game, right? And so I think within the last year, you had a lot of people creating and utilizing that tech. And I think to Paul's point, yeah, I mean, it only matters within the Web2 side and it disrupts their whole business model. And so you won't see them disrupting their own business model unless they really have to. And so this is why it's really exciting to see these Web3 native games hopefully come out and generate that. And then people actually care about it and really play it to the point that they really want these skins and pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for, right? And so I think that's what we're really rooting for, and really hope that, you know, one of these Web3 games can create that. Because at the end, I think in order to have disruption, you actually need to have traction, and that's sustainable traction for the long term. One thing that I think that might happen in the very end is that these Web3 feature points of, you know, asset ownership or secondary markets, or just even utilizing the wallets to sell, is only partial aspects, right? It's not the fully on-chain games, right? So fully on-chain games is really, really interesting, but I feel like we're so far away. And if you talk to, you know, 10, 20, 100, you know, game studios, like, most of them don't even understand the details of how to utilize the blockchain, regardless of even the tech itself. So it's actually very difficult, and in addition to that, it's actually very, very expensive to put everything on-chain, just because the infra is not ready yet. I mean, and so most of these studios are focused on primarily the first thing, which is, how do I build a fun game that people would want to play, right? And in that sentence, has nothing to do with how the blockchains utilize, what blockchain I use, how do I integrate the wallet, right? The first is, you know, finding a game or a type of vertical within gaming that people will play, and they can actually have a profitable business model from that to get users.
So actually, maybe the next question is for the audience. How many of you guys have actually played a Web3 game? Please raise your hand. Okay, not as little as I thought, so maybe. But I like, for it to get to the masses, it's just not comparable at the moment, right, to traditional gaming with 2.7 billion gamers. What do you think from, you know, a gaming infrastructure perspective needs to happen in order to onboard the masses? Ed, you want to start, or Darren, you want to go first?
You go first.
I think I actually play Web2 and Web3 games. I think what the biggest issue from a player's perspective is gas fees. It's not that I'm cheap. I just don't want to pay for gas fees at all. And I think it's really absurd. It's almost the same as saying I should pay for your game's server fees. So for ICP, we have a very unique perspective on this. So in our ecosystem, we actually have something called reverse gas fees. The users don't pay for this. It's actually the project, the protocol. And I think once you eliminate this, you actually one step closer to eliminating the barriers of blockchain, so that when you're playing games, you actually don't realize it's actually a blockchain game. So like what Mark said, people don't really care about the features of blockchain, the tech behind it. They want really good user experience. So I think this is actually one barrier of bringing mass adoption to Web3 gaming.
Yeah, I think on the infra side, I think, you know, I like to say that your experience playing like a Web3 game at worst needs to be the same thing as Web2, right? Like, you download a game on your iPhone, you already have your credit card or payment information stored, everything is seamless there. And up until recently, it's been go sign up with a centralized exchange, get money in there, figure out how to set up MetaMask, send it in there, you know, store your private key, all that fun stuff. So, you know, I think the fiat on-ramps, I think, you know, custodial wallets or account abstraction, all that stuff is important. But actually, I think the biggest barrier to mass adoption has been that it's not a tech thing, but more like user acquisition. Like, people tend to think a Web3 game will say, oh, I'm going to drop a token and then spin up a Discord, and I'll get 5,000 people in there, and I'm done with community building, right? There's a reason why, you know, I worked at EA before this. Even for EA's top games like FIFA, Madden, Apex, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year on user acquisition. And I think that bringing in influencers, advertising is probably one of the biggest things I look for, or we look for when we try to figure out which games to bring on the platform.
It's something we are really focused on, so thank you for bringing that up. Mark, yeah.
So that's kind of the go-to-market, right? And let's start off from the game side. And at its core, I think it's right. Like, it's basically more of you're comparing to Web 2, and it's just the easy experience, easy onboarding. It's playing, and so that, you know, you really don't even have that differentiating factor, right? So I guess infra, that helps that, right? I mean, simply put, I'm not really going into the details on what that looks like, but that's at the end of the day what you're compared to. And then in terms of onboarding a billion users, or I guess get to 3 billion, get to the 2.7 billion gamers in the world, is really there's a huge gap right now between figuring out how does Web3 games go and get those users versus a Web2. I mean, the traditional route, utilizing publishers, spending millions of dollars on marketing, you know, now utilizing maybe more influencers, things like that. I think that's a part where maybe, you know, Explo or Come To Us kind of has that advantage because they have that experience, right? They know they need a budget for that. While, you have all of these, new game developers that don't have that experience, and they think they can just do it the old way, right, or the Web3 way. But what ends up happening if they drop tokens or if they just drop Discord is the fact that they probably don't find the gamers. They probably find the users there looking for airdrops, users looking for financial gain, not really there to actually play your game, right? So even though if you generate, get up to, 100,000, 200,000 followers on Twitter, are those really followers that are there because they're excited about your game, or are they really excited about the Web3 aspect of a bull market, or excited about kind of this uptick in possible financial return or things like that, versus the actual community building of wanting to play your game, liking the IP, right? Liking the gameplay. And, I think until we kind of see that get closer and figuring out that games actually, game studios are able to close that gap, then I think we'll see kind of more uptick in true gamers entering the market.
Yeah, actually, Paul, for I guess more specifically around, call it Summer's War or mini game party from Come to Us. What are those barriers that you see right now that users are kind of having to get over? And then what do you think you guys are doing to solve that?
So we are in a privileged position because we already have millions of users from Web2 side all over the world. Now, our goal isn't to go after current Web3 community. It's more about trying to convert our existing users over to Web3. Now, one of the things that's preventing us from converting our existing users to Web3 at a faster rate is essentially the tokenomics. The tokenomics needs to be, one, sustainable, meaning it can't be affected by the market volatility as much. You need users that will play the game regardless of what happens in the market. But you have to balance that sustainable tokenomics with enough incentives for the users to come to play. If there's no incentive for the users to convert into Web3, why would they convert into Web3? They will just play the Web2 game as they have done, and nothing changes. So but then you can't give them too much incentive. Otherwise, you're going to attract all of the speculators that will come to play your games for the sake of earning tokens or for NFT airdrops or whatever. So we're working really hard on the tokenomic side. We work with, I think, 20 different internal and external game studios right now. And each game studio, whenever they release a game, they're testing out different type of tokenomics so that we can find what the key mechanisms are to find a balanced economy within that game. So that's something that we're really working on. But going back to onboarding or converting Web2 users into Web3, it's all about education, I think. It comes down to education. And just explaining them to that it's not a scam. You actually get benefits from the Web3 experience, and you get to own your own thing. Like everything that you earn, everything that you acquire, everything that you purchase, you actually own it. And that, I don't know, to me, that's a paradigm-shifting thing in the gaming industry that is very exciting. But we talk about it so much that we've kind of been, yeah. But anyways, so the one last thing I would say about converting gamers into Web3 would be lowering the entry barrier to Web3, I think, is very important. Right now, if we have to create a wallet, we have to create an account with centralized exchanges for fiat on-ramp. It's just too much. So we're working on ways to simplify that. I don't need to know my key passphrases. Just let me play the game. Let me own my items. Let me trade my items the way that I want, and I don't need to see all the tech behind the scenes.
Can I add one part?
Yeah.
So I really like what Paul said, and I think one thing that blockchain can do, then hopefully add more value to the users, is that basically you can enhance the gamification of onboarding maybe from the Web3, Web 2 users to get them into Web3, right? And that's the whole thesis is that, adding blockchain tech can allow, for you to do more, for the studio, for the game developer to do more with their players, right? Whether it's providing more incentives, like Paul said, it could be in-game, it can be platform related, maybe come to us related or things like that. So it really opens that door to kind of all of these other aspects. Otherwise, if it doesn't, then you're kind of basically just going back to the Web 2 side, right? Why would the users go to Web 3? And so I think the whole thesis behind Web 3 gaming, and a lot of it is really figuring out what those, users and how do you gamify it so that you can enhance them more. Maybe you know more of their data and it's public and they can utilize that aspect. So I think that's a very exciting part of the blockchain innovation that I was talking about earlier, where it's excited to see these new teams come up with new ideas that just no one ever thought about. That's probably not sustainable, but regardless, in the short span, you might take a part of that piece and add it to maybe a true sustainable model.
All right, I think we have a couple minutes here. So things change really fast in this space. It's gone from play to earn to play and earn and play to own, right? Free to own, all these different things people are saying around blockchain gaming. So I'm just curious, what do you think for in the next few years? What are the what are the major trends that are gonna happen? Call it in the next 2024, 2025.
Yeah, I think this next year we'll probably see the first game get to mass scale. So whether that's, I'd say, like 7 figures, not just in MAUs, but in actual like active wallets, like people transacting, which would be the main metric that as a layer one we look at, right? I think the other piece is, if you go a little further, like the ideals of Web3, which is truly owning your items, like decentralization, composability across these assets, like they could take off in traditional Web 2 game. And I think as Paul said, like it could totally change industry on its head, right? Because these traditional Web 2 giants, they don't move unless the market tells them to, or their user base, right? This happened with free to play, this happened with a lot of things. So they're not incentivized to do this, but if gamers start voting with their wallets and their play time to say, hey, we want to only play stuff that incentivizes us back, right? Then I think that it can totally click with these larger traditional studios. And we may be sitting here a year or two from now with a bunch of studio execs in the audience or something like that, which would be really exciting.
Darren?
I think in the next cycle, we'll see really big gaming studios entering the Web3 space, in the sense that they provide really good gameplay without you realizing you're on a blockchain. I think one studio which I'm currently looking into is like Exterior Games. They have a lot of, they're incubating a lot of studios from Call of Duty, PUBG, Free Fire, and what they're creating here is that a new wave of games which they actually don't need tokenomics. The only blockchain elements that actually integrating is that you can actually have pure ownership of NFTs. I have yet to see a perfect model of tokenomics, and I think it's because it does not work at this stage. So it kind of goes against what Paul says at the beginning. So it's because I feel that yield brings great attention, but it really doesn't bring, it brings attention, but it really doesn't bring retention. When you come for the incentives, you don't really come for the game. You just come because of what you can get temporarily. And I think what we should really do is that make games when you should play it for the user experience, and then you play and reinvest back into the game of what happens no matter what the market conditions are.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like we're already having large studios come in and play. I mean, you have Come to Us. I mean, you have Netmarble, you have Cacao Games. So I mean, all of these studios are already looking into Web3, right? And it's not like new game developers are going to pop out of nowhere that's quality, because it takes 5, 10, 15 years of experience to actually create a game and have those teams, right? So what I've learned in this past year is that you're actually not going to have tons of quality team developers just pop out of nowhere and decide, you know what, I'm going to make a new game that is going to blow everyone out of the water. But I think what I am excited about next year, and it's similar to what Ed said earlier, is that you have these games that spent tens of millions of dollars, years, and coming up next year. And I think I can say for everyone here is that we all want some traction to be made for those, because it solidifies the fact that Web3 gaming does make a difference, that it is real, that it is fun. And so I do feel like the gaming community is very small, And so, I think everyone knows everyone. And so, we all kind of want to see that happen. So pretty excited.
I think in the next year or two, I think what we'll begin to see is Web3 games realizing that they may not have the right distribution or live ops strategies or experiences. Whether it's a Web2 game or a Web3 game, if your players are all over the world, you want to be able to provide live ops in multiple languages, in localized languages, in localized times. And I don't think a lot of Web3 projects realize that at this point. But for us, like we've been doing live ops for the past 10, 15 years all over the world. We have 10 different offices around the world. We service, we provide live ops in 14 different languages. And I think this is something that, because we are a Web2 gaming studio first, we are able to share the knowledge and support Web3 games in this regard. So in 2021 and 2022, I think all the Web3 gaming studios or projects were focused on raising funds. In 2022 and 2023, they're going to be focused on building the actual game. In 2024 and beyond, we'll start to see more of these games being actually launched. But after that, what are they going to do? It's not like launching a game isn't the whole story. Like as a gaming studio, my goal is to prolong the lifetime value of any game. Like we want to be able to invest into a game and operate it for 5, 10, 15 years if possible. Because that's where we make the money. And if you can't do that, you're going to have games that pumps for a year and then just dies off. And it's just not a good investment, right? So I think live ops and game distribution is going to be very important in the next 2 to 3 years.
All right, awesome. So that wraps up our panel today. So thank you, everybody, and hopefully you learned a thing or two here.